So, all right, we're going to talk about interaction improv today, and Prof and I are from the T-Mobile Creation Center. It's a small satellite design office for T-Mobile, a carrier. And our particular team, which is concept design, is focused on really thinking 3 to 5 years out, understanding not only what new design and product opportunities are married to business viability, but also in this case it was an opportunity to kind of really think what the future of interaction is in a discipline project role, kind of like an interaction sabbatical, where we had the whole team engaged just on this one project on the side to kind of really look at how do we change interaction, how is it going to change going forward. What we're not going to talk about is actually the result of this, because it's all, unfortunately, patent pending. So we're going to talk about the process of how we got to patent pending state, and the techniques that we used to kind of get there.
That's John Mann.
That's Prof. Mike.
We represent the Creation Center. We're from T-Mobile. We have a downtown center called the... Oh, you did?
Yeah, so you're drinking. So
I'm sorry. So did you cover the 3 to 5 years out?
I did.
Okay.
But I didn't talk about who we worked with.
Oh, right on. So
it's the end of the night.
we were very lucky enough to have, we have a very talented set of people that, we have a prototyper, an interaction prototyper that's really great with technology, other interaction designers, and an access to a whole creative collective, such as motion designers, industrial designers, and researchers. And we also had an opportunity to work with Artifact for a portion of this as well, and they were set aside to basically work alongside to either affirm or go explore on their own what other opportunities might be. And also T, because there's a form factor portion of kinetic UI.
And what is kinetic UI? We'll jump to the
yeah.
next slide. So we'll talk about that. So we actually kicked off a project that we finished a while ago, but we kicked it off a year ago. It was really looking to explore what we called kinetic UI. And it was really looking at just what we're talking about today as a whole, what's beyond touch, what comes after that. And the hypothesis, the thesis really is like we have to look both at what happens on screen, which we always do as interaction designers, but what is the new physicality of interacting with that information? And looking at those two at the same time to really come up with those solutions. And when we talk about that, the new opportunities in mobile space, graphics, we've seen higher resolution screens, better processors in devices, we can do more in real-time 3D. The physical interaction, we have multi-touch, there are new opportunities beyond that, but also the inclusion of sensors. And the sensors in mobile devices is really where we're going to start to see a lot of change and a lot of new opportunity for how we interact. And to actually just go to the next one.
Oh, and one thing I want to mention is the one component that you're not going to see is the form factor. So one of the pieces that you see here is, yes, it's the sensors, it's the gestures, it's the graphics inside the screen, but it's also the form factor that help enhance that gestural experience.
That's a part that's all locked down by lawyers.
Yeah.
So, we talk about sensors and devices in the iPhone. The first iPhone really kind of popularized an accelerometer in the device, right? We started to see, as I naturally interact with the device, the screen flips. And the second and third generations brought on compasses, and we had ambient light sensors. The microphone is actually a great sensor on a device that is underutilized by most application developers. It's not just for voice and speech. But we're starting to see actually an explosion of new opportunity. The iPhone 4 brought on gyroscopes, and we have compasses in the devices. But if we kind of look up here, there's new opportunities. I'll just focus on a couple. Force and pressure. Being able to kind of tell the device the enormity of my intent, adding a fourth dimension, how hard I squeeze or torque or twist the device might play into how fast I want to go through a list or how subtle a motion I want. Velocity and speed, we look at GPS to know where we are, but what's the context around that? Am I there in a car, on a bike, am I walking? Did I just fall and I can't get up? Biometrics, so let's talk about devices of the future that don't belong to anyone. But if I pick up a device, it becomes mine because it understands who I am through those biometrics. Or that device can know more about me. Am I stressed? Am I calm? Does it have to react to different ways there? So biometrics are new, unique opportunities that are going to be coming to these devices. And then finally, we look at cameras and image detection. So we've all now seen sort of Xbox Kinect and gesturing in front of a camera. But look at the iPhone, the Evo, and front-facing cameras that are today being used for video chat. Tomorrow they have a very expressive opportunity both for biometrics and understanding who we are, but what are we doing and how we can interact with the device in different ways and in different dimensions. And so again, all of these is just the beginning of an explosion of sensors and new input models for devices that are going to talk about or change how we interact.
So what we're going to show you today are different techniques that we tried to use, and some were successful and some were not. And we've come up with these great names to talk to you about them with. The first one is FUI. We look at fantasy UI, inspiration from movies like Avatar, or the very famous one, Minority Report, big gestures in front of the transparent screen, as well as Sexy Plexi, which is really the idea of having something in your hand, get physical, have it in your hand, move around with it. Improv, using your gut, your instincts based on scenarios. Pack Mule, using little sensor studies, getting the technology in your hand, moving it around, and vetting the ideas that you have. And Odd Couples, looking at people from parallel disciplines to help drive that concept a little bit further along. We'll go into these. So, FUI, Fantasy UI. So what we did is we did a lot of visual capture. We took a lot of secondary research, and we looked as much as inspiration as we could. We looked at video games and different experiments that are out there in Flash on the desktop. And we were looking at the connection of, especially video game platforms, the connection of that hardware controller in your hand and that actually being a device, moving it around in your hands, as well as what you see on screen that's visual, that 3D experience. It's like Halo. You're actually walking around in a space and being a character, and it's infinite, your 3D world. So what we did is we categorized some of these worlds. Like I mentioned, that one of the themes was 3D world. We had parallax and then infinite canvas. So what we did with this was a standard one, brainstorming sessions. So what we did is we took these themes and we said, okay, you guys come together, and I'm sorry, I failed to mention Creation Center has wonderful talent. We invited them all together to do the brainstorming session. We said, okay, here's your themes, and here's a tally of things that we do on our device already. So pair these together and come up with as many concepts as possible. Again, standard brainstorming session. Hand out the half sheets, you say, all right, your time, come up with all the concepts that you can, and here's a visual. We have this running in the background. We said, okay, be inspired, look at some of the 3D examples that are out there. This one is parallax, and then we had a couple of other examples. Unfortunately, great visual concepts, wonderful ideas, but this is kinetic UI. This is physical. This is gestural. So we realized that our concepts were awesome, but not physical. Didn't address the problem that we have, the design problem that we were looking to solve. And so what we did is, as designers, we just looked at our own device. We said, okay, let's take the screen, let's turn it off, let's get really intimate with the device. Have it in your hands, carry it around. And of course, the simple paper prototype, adding layers on, carrying it around, rubbing your fingers on it, understanding what the surfaces are like for you, what can you experience here. And this is just an exercise study that we did with just an iPhone, which led us...
No, before we jump there, going back to what we did in FUI, think about the game controller and how everything in that device is a control. Your hand's completely around, you have two joysticks, you have multiple buttons, you've got the accelerometer embedded in it, and it's all about this kind of multi-dimensional, multimodal interaction, and again, getting very physical with the phone itself. How do we afford different input mechanisms beyond that front-facing screen and just even touch? So.
Which led us to?
Sexy Plexi. So as we said in FUI, we had lots of visual ideas, no interaction ideas. So Sexy Plexi literally is just a piece of plexiglass or acrylic representing a phone.
Dual screen version?
Yeah, hey, we get technical, right? And on the front it just has Post-it notes, so we can actually look at the on-screen and the physical interaction. And we broke the teams up this time into groups of 3. There were no chairs in the room, there was nothing going on the screen. Everyone had to be standing up. They had to take a scenario, they had to create a solution for it, and then they had to give us a narrative. They had to tell the story back. And what we got this time around was a lot of expression, a lot of physical expression, because you had this device and you had nothing but to hold it, to manipulate it in a different way, and to come up with some really engaging physical and gestural interactions with it. And the funny thing this time around is You know, we thought people would draw control mechanisms on the screen that would go along with what they were doing physically. The only thing anyone ever drew on the screen was a screen, just the outline and the Sharpie, right? Everything was very much a physical gesture, interacting with every surface of the device, interacting with the screen itself. And again, when they told that story back, and you can jump to Joe now, when they told that story back, they had to be very physical as well. So it really reinforced the physical nature of what we were trying to look for.
Not only me being pensive back there, but also you'll notice, you know, we have Joe here really showing an example, right? It's like, what is he doing here? Why is he, you know? And then in the background, you'll notice another peer of ours, he's physically using it as a tennis racket, right? So it's very interesting ideas that we have. Do we have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, that environment is very conducive to a lot of use of the phone, but like no one ever does anything with the phone when you're laying in bed and you're actually using the gravity or the monitor above you, which is something that people use their phone a lot. They set their alarm on their phone, and it's the first thing they do in the morning if they're like me.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's a common frustration too if anyone has an iPhone and the thing's constantly rotating on you when you're just trying to use it, and right, because gravity is.
Yeah, and you can't look up. You're upside down, and you're just trying to look at your email.
But yeah, so there's different use cases, different scenarios. I mean, we were kind of doing the general, but also get into the situation, and that kind of leads to
Interaction Improv, which is what this title is called. We were very
Thanks for the segue.
Awesome.
good segue. Thank you.
Awesome segue.
So what we did here is that we were lucky enough to work with Artifact, and they were hired on to really work parallel, to go out and explore and either affirm or find out other ideas that might work better for this problem. You know, the kinetic UI. What can we do here? And what we did is they hired a director and actors to come in and on the fly very quickly set them up with a scenario, and they would have to resolve that scenario on the fly. And they had, these actors are really actors. They had no context of really what they were doing. They're not, you know, they didn't really get that we were doing kinetic UI. They didn't really understand that they were doing, you know, technology-based experiences.
Even random props,
Yeah.
tennis balls and flashlights.
And we did things like, oh, you're at an airport and your hands are full and you're carrying around bags, so what are you going to do? How are you going to pick up that phone call, right? And what I did is, well, some of it was great, right? I can't tell you how many scenarios we had the butt call, right? Or the right butt cheek pickup, or...
Jaw dialing is favorite. Yeah, it's not gonna...
And, you know, so some of this worked, but some of it didn't necessarily work. But there were some really great, beautiful moments, and we captured one.
He's testing the bedroom scenario for you, by the way.
Yeah, that's total great segue right there. But you know what I'm going to show you a clip where I really like the idea that this, you know, this